28-year-old political newcomer emerges as a star after pulling off a stunning upset over 10-term incumbent Congressman Joe Crowley here in New York. Her win caught the attention of President Trump.
One of my biggest critics, a slovenly man named Joe Crowley, got his ass kicked by a young woman who had a lot of energy. She had a lot of energy.
Joining me now is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Thank you so much for joining us. I think President Trump was praising you there. Your reaction?
I mean, first of all, it is unacceptable to be, disrespectful. I think of Congressman Crowley. He's done some phenomenal work for the Bronx and Queens, and so I'm first and foremost saddened and upset at the disrespect that he displayed at my predecessor, and I mean, it's bizarre, to say the least.
And we'll come back to the president in just a second, but since we have you, and since you are now a new force within the Democratic Party, I do want to get your take on the news of the day, which is major news of the day. Justice Anthony Kennedy is retiring. The president will get to nominate a new pick for the Supreme Court. By all accounts, it will be a Gorsuch-like pick that will move the court to the right. There's very little that the Democrats can do, if anything, to stop this. But what is your advice to your fellow Democrats? How do you want to see Democrats react to this over the next several months?
Well, I think that we should be unafraid to play hardball a little bit in this Congress. After all, the Republican Party, I think, has shown throughout the Obama presidency the extent to which that they would go, to be obstructionist. And while I don't believe that we should be halting progress in this country, I don't believe that the party, that we should be a force for progress. At the same time, they stole the first Supreme Court seat. And for us to take that sitting down in this time, especially when there are so many critical decisions, pending, we're talking about labor rights on the line, civil rights, women's rights, etc. At the very least that we can do, I think, is delay that damage.
How? Practically speaking, how do you fight this?
Well, I think legislatively, once again, we have to create a lot of pressure. I myself come from the background as an organizer. And in order for us to get things done, in Congress especially, I feel like we need to organize inside and outside the chamber. And if we only work inside the chamber, then we aren't going to get too much done. We have to work in conjunction, organize popular support to push our priorities in the chamber, and that's really how we're going to get our agenda and our priorities passed.
There are Democratic senators who supported Neil Gorsuch, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Connolly, Joe Manchin. There could be so-called red state Democrats that support this next pick as well. Do you feel as if your fellow Democrats from the progressive wing should abandon these people?
No, I mean, I think that it all comes to circumstance. It all comes to that one individual choice. Like, what does abandon mean? And I think that at the end of the day, that word abandon, does it mean to support primary challengers? Does it mean to, refuse to work with them? What does abandon mean? I don't think that we should ever just say we're not going to work with members of within our own party once they're in our party and in our chamber. But I also think that we can apply pressure. We should be applying pressure to some of those individuals that may be, frankly, I think, putting some of people's most basic rights in jeopardy.
I want to talk about you, if we can, for a moment, because there was, I'm old enough to remember when your primary win was the biggest news of the day. That lasted until a Supreme Court vacancy existed there.
Right.
The Majority Leader Mitch McConnell commented on this. Republicans are trying to use you in some of your positions as a bit of a wedge here. Listen to the leader.
It was a stunning development. The energy in the Democratic Party is self-avowed socialist, open borders. I think it's a general election problem for them in a number of places, and a real drag on the party in terms of appealing to American voters who I don't think want us to turn into a European socialist country.
He uses the S word, socialist. You are a Democratic socialist. You can see how Republicans will bring that up. What's your response?
Well, I think that we've seen that the American people, the vast majority of American people, believed in improved and expanded Medicare for all. They believe that we should have public college and trade school. They believe that we should elevate the minimum wage. And, I think it's easy for Republicans to start yelling out labels in order to be divisive and incite fear. But at the end of the day, I believe that our legislative priorities are completely in line and reflective with the majority of Americans. And I understand why they want to use fear tactics, and I understand why they're scared of me, because I represent a change to their status quo. I represent, I think, a real threat to the Republican Party.
Some of these legislative priorities include eliminating ICE, for instance. And President Trump came after you directly on that. I don't have time to play the sound there, but he noted that there are Democrats who want to eliminate ICE. He says this would put people at risk. You don't deny that you'd like to see ICE go.
Yeah, and I think what people need to remember is that ICE was just established in 2003. We had an immigration system before then. ICE was established with the Patriot Act, with the Iraq War, with the AUMF, with DHS, and we look at all of that legislation now as a mistake. And I think now we're starting to realize that ICE, part of that suite of legislation, has a structure that allows for civil rights and human rights abuses. And, it may seem like a radical position, but I actually think it's very, very common sense. We should not be separating children from their families. We should not be detaining people and violating, one's rights to due process.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Look forward to speaking with you again in the future, maybe for many, many years, based on what could be your new seat coming up. Thank you.